We are back for our next episode of the Westwood Living Podcast. Thank you so much for choosing to listen to us. I am Tom Leyden, your host, and I'm joined today by Shannon Connell, who is the administrator at White Oak Cottages, which is the memory care households at Fox Hill Village. And there's a lot of good stuff for us to talk about, but first of all, just hello, Shannon. Thank you very much for welcoming me today.
Nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
This is a great topic for so many people in this town who are in my demo. You know, people 40s and 50s, parents are reaching that point of their lives where kids are wondering what the end of life plan is going to be. And this is specifically a memory care place, but Fox Hill Village in general, you've been associated with for, you just told me,
25 years.
Unbelievable, a quarter of a century. So maybe we even start there with your association with Fox Hill Village in general and your takeaway from your experience and what sets this place apart in general, even before we get specifically to White Oak. Give me your life story about how you got here and what you've learned in a quarter century.
Well, I've worked at Fox Hill for more than half my life now. I started when I was 21 in the activities department because elderly people and geriatrics has always been the thing that I wanted to do the most. So eventually I ended up on the opening team for White Oak Cottages and have been here for 13 years. But I really feel like I learned a lot about how places like Fox Hill build community. And one of the main things that our senior citizens are facing is isolation and loneliness in their homes, and being in a community like Fox Hill really provides people with the opportunity to continue engaging with their peers and making new friends and attending activities in an enclosed environment where you don't have to drive somewhere. You can just walk out your door and go have dinner with a friend or go to a concert or go to a lecture, and it really keeps people active and moving in really healthy ways.
So I would say the most I've ever been embedded here in Fox Hill was about a year ago when we were in the midst of working on our cover story featuring Mimi Baird, who of course wrote the book focused on her father, which is now being turned into a screenplay. Brad Pitt's involved with it and all the rest of that. But it really opened my eyes to exactly what you're talking about. You know, you walk through the doors and you can see people engaging with each other. And not only do you see people engaging with each other, but even if the room at that given moment might be empty, you can say, oh, this is a great place for X, Y, or Z. You can see how the infrastructure has been built to encourage that environment of community, which is, I would assume, probably one of the top things that sets Fox Hill apart from some of the other options that people might consider. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I think their dedication to having programming that really centers on what the residents enjoy and what they like, and it's really sort of top-notch premier programming that they, you know, really reach out to different resources, Berklee College of Music and the different colleges around to really get, you know, top-notch programming. So it really supports what these residents are interested in furthering their studies, their engagement in community service and different things, and their interest in symphony and all different sorts of art stuff.
So let's talk specifically about your transition and making the shift over to White Oak Cottages, which is in 2012, which is now 13 years ago. What was it about that opportunity that stood out to you as something you wanted to pursue?
Well, it was really exciting because it was a whole new opportunity that we honestly didn't know a lot about. We are, you know, an independent retirement community, and we decided to venture into assisted living because we could see that there was a need for further support for some of our residents who were struggling in sort of the larger community, and they were having to leave, and we didn't want that. So we wanted to provide an opportunity to be more of a continuing care community, more of a place for elders to be able to stay within the confines of Fox Hill, particularly with spouses, or if you already had friendships, you didn't want to have to leave and go someplace else. So it was just really exciting to start that process and find out about how we were going to do it. And we partnered with something called the Greenhouse Project, which is a nationwide organization that works to deinstitutionalize long-term care. And they really helped us formalize what we wanted to do and how we wanted it to look. And their philosophy really melded well with the Fox Hill philosophy. So it worked out great. And it was they supported us through education and staffing models and all sorts of things. So we were able to really be successful without a lot of knowledge in how to run an assisted living.
So does a resident of Fox Hill Village get first crack at White Oak Cottages?
Yes, our residents have first priority, but we are open to the outside.
Right. So if there's a potential opening and somebody walks in, what's that typically like?
So we have a waiting list. So one of the things, like you're saying, your demographic being those 40s and 50-year-olds. So the key sort of is to think ahead and plan ahead, because while there are a lot of memory care communities out there, there's often a wait list. So sort of planning ahead, looking at all the ones that you want to see, knowing what your options are, because you don't know who's going to have an opening when it's your time. So we encourage people to get on the wait list. And when we do have an opening, we reach out obviously to our Fox Hill residents first. And then if they pass, then we reach out to our outside wait list. And so we're generally about probably 60% Fox Hill residents, 40% outside.
All right, here's a combination question for you. It's what sets you apart, yes, but also coupled with what kinds of questions should people be asking while they are planning ahead? Things that they should be thinking about and maybe prioritizing that you say, that's what makes us one of the best.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love being the first place if someone comes on a tour. Like, I love meeting with families and talking to them about what assisted living looks like, because I think people have a lot of misconceptions about what assisted living is. And the reality is, for a lot of assisted living places, it's an apartment and a dining room and an activity program. Care is usually extra, not always included or part of the process until someone needs it or gets there. In a memory care will be part of it, but at what cost? So it's really important when you're looking at memory care facilities to find out what their pricing structure is. Is there tiers? Is it like we're all inclusive? Other places have tiers. How often do they reevaluate care levels to see if the price has to increase? One of the things that we have on site is 24-hour nursing. So ask that question. Ask, okay, if my mom slips out of bed but isn't hurt at 3 a.m., what happens? Is it an automatic out to the hospital because there's no nurse there to evaluate her? What happens if my mom needs Tylenol at 3 a.m.? What happens if they have an accident in bed and the sheets need to be changed? Is there extra fees involved in that? Those kind of questions are really important to ask. And also about medications. Who gives the medications? What if they have to be crushed? Because in assisted living, there's some differences in that the aides can give medications, but they're not allowed to give eye drops or patches or creams. You need a nurse to do that. Is there a nurse on site to do that? Is there an extra cost to that? So there's can be a lot of hidden fees or unexpected fees is probably a better way to say it in assisted living. So really trying to get a grasp for what that's going to look like, because I think a lot of the upset families sometimes have with assisted living is they think it's going to be one price, and by a few months in, it's a totally different price.
Yeah, wow, you've made a great checklist there. Someone just rewind that and make a little checklist and then check off all those boxes as you ask your questions. But
I have a lovely spreadsheet. I'd be happy to email
you do?
to anyone.
That's fantastic. Yeah. See, perfect. That's what you get for working at a place for 13 years. You're an expert in exactly what you do. But here's the big one. So both of my parents passed in the last 5 years. And I would say the overriding emotion that we had as kids and concern that we had as kids was, how long can we last financially?
Yeah.
And you just don't know, because you don't know how long they're going to live, right? And so I don't know if there's a workaround to that emotion. What advice do you give to families when mom, who was the second to die, died? It was kind of like, okay, I guess we shouldn't have been so stressed. But had she lived another 15 years, there is plenty of reasons for stress.
Absolutely.
So what sort of advice do you give to families when they're facing that uncertainty?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with, if you have a financial planner, meeting with your financial planners, making sure that you are on the same page with your parents, that you have access to their information, that you have a full understanding. Do they have long-term care insurance? I just had a family whose mom has been here for 4 years say to me, I just found out my mom has long-term care insurance. Oh. I was like, okay, so we're going to try to do some paperwork and get you some back pay. But they could have been getting that money for the last 4 years, but they didn't know she had that policy.
Right.
So trying to get a firm grasp, which can be hard, especially with a dad, doesn't always necessarily want to let you into their finances. But if you can get a firm grasp, especially if there's memory issues, so you can help them understand the full picture. For example, here we screen for 5 years of financial ability to pay, because our goal is to keep people through the end of life, and average length of stay is in that range. Not every facility screens for that long. Sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's 2. And that's to go back to the question about what else you should ask. That's another question. What does it look like when someone progresses in this disease? Do they get to stay here, or do they move on to a nursing home? Because that will increase your cost, because we're $13,000 a month, but a nursing home might be $20,000 a month. So if you're financially planning, you have to look at those pictures. So getting just a firm grasp, I think, on what you have, and if you have long-term care insurance to help pay for that, and can your finances support it, selling the house, like whatever you need to do.
You mentioned very early on that you wanted to do this early. From when you were 21 years old, you wanted to work in this field. Why?
So my grandparents were very involved in the town. My grandfather was a postman, and my grandmother worked at a dental office and then volunteered in the town. And one of the things they did, they were like in their 50s and 60s, was they spent a lot of time with the senior citizens in the town, delivering meals, visiting with them. And my grandmother used to bring me to this nursing home called the Vendor nursing home in Foxborough Center to visit residents there. And then so eventually when I was in high school, I started a volunteer program with the high school kids at the Vendor, just to decorate and bring some cheer and visit with them. So I always had a connection with elderly people, and just I always said I wanted to run a really nice nursing home. And my grandmother, before she passed, joked with me. She's like, you did, you reached your goal that you said that you wanted. So, I mean, we're not a nursing home, but we care for the elderly people, and we do it in a great way.
You know what's interesting? Me too. When I was in college, I did my service for a full year with little brothers, little sisters, friends of the elderly. And it was fantastic. And I think back to the fact that the woman who I met with every week was born in 1907.
Wow.
Right? When you think about it now, it's like, wow, how old would she be? But it's always been fun. I enjoy interacting with senior citizens. And honestly, you listen more than you talk, right? Most of the time.
Yeah.
You just absorb the stories, because there was a gentleman I saw recently who was wearing a World War II hat. And immediately I said to myself, like, you're not going to see those in 10 years.
Yeah.
There's going to be nobody left 10 years from now, for the most part, who fought in World War II. So I think those of us who are open to learning direct lessons from people who walked the walk and lived the life, this is a really cool opportunity to interact with folks. Whether you're doing something at the senior center here in Westwood, or in your line of work, it's what your calling is. What have you learned? What's basically the best life lesson you've learned, whether it's work related or just whether it's spiritual or relationship, or you've been here for 13 years now in this setting. What can you take away as something that you learned?
Well, one of the things I always find super amusing is that parenting dynamics never change. And when I used to work down at Foxell, I'd be sometimes in the dining room, and I'd go to a table to take an order, and the 70-year-old daughter visiting her 90-year-old mom would be like, I think I'll have apple pie. And the mom would go, do you really need that? Like, it just cracks me up that like the parenting dynamic never changes. Like, even when your child is 75 and you're 95, you are still going to parent them, and you're still going to tell them what to do, and it's not going to change. And we just, as adults, sometimes get frustrated, I feel like, with our parents when they try to tell us what to do, but we just have to realize that's not going to change. They're still our parents, and we're going to do the same thing to our kids when they're that age. So
spot on. Well, the one thing Shannon said that I think you should take to heart is that you should plan. And part of planning is doing some research. So you can obviously go to foxhillvillage.com. For those of you watching and looking at the slate, you see that the phone number is 781-320-1999. But even if you weren't watching and weren't seeing the slate, now you know the number. I'll say it again, 781-320-1999. Shannon Connell is the administrator here at White Oak Cottages, which is the memory care households at Fox Hill Village. So maybe you get some phone calls. You can start educating some people.
That would be great. Happy to do it.
Well, I appreciate your time and I appreciate your expertise. And it's an interesting topic to me, having just gone through it. And I know there's other people who I interact with on a daily and weekly basis whose parents are getting up there and they need to be thinking about this stuff. So
yeah, we're happy to be a resource to the community, answer questions, even if we're not in everyone's price range, but we're always happy to talk and educate people on assisted living and what that means.
It's awesome. Thank you, Shannon. Appreciate your time. And as always, folks, if there's someone else you want me to have a conversation with, just reach out, tleiden@bestversionmedia.com. I will find that person, have a conversation with them, and then share it with you right here on the Westwood Living Podcast Network. But for now, for Shannon, I'm Tom. We'll talk to you soon.